Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to talk about why it's so complicated to eat healthy. We're back with some guests we've had before. Of course, we have Ron, my co-host, and we have Andrea Holland back and Mekai Blackwell back as guests. I thought it was so interesting to see how this conversation evolved. What we quickly discovered was that it's not easy to eat healthy. In fact, there are so many landmines. What we found out through the discussion was that we had to each know so much about food and health in order to navigate all our choices. It isn't as easy as just eat organic or don't eat processed foods. So in this part one of the conversation, it's about why it's so complicated. And then in part two, we dive into how to eat healthy, how lifestyle and diets affect relationships, as well as how genetics play into the food that's good for us. So thanks again for listening, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
I do think the lifestyle can lead into religion. And maybe even there's some big religions that are formed maybe because of the food stuff that then led into other things. And it is a slippery slope, right? Where you really can dive down and adjust your life so much that you can't leave that thing, right? Because you're so blocked in. And it's not just food. It could be what you read or watch on TV or what my parents are basically Fox News owns them now, or whatever, and right. and they're in that world. Like they've created a whole world for themselves, thanks to Fox News. And so yeah, it does seem like you would quickly, or not quickly, but you could easily end up with a very strong lifestyle. Do whatever your diet is. It doesn't have to be a restricted one, but I think, and I think the more restricted it is, maybe the more the lifestyle comes with it. Also,
so interesting.
And it may be legit. Like it's not wrong to be in that lifestyle either. And
right.
and this is why the blue zones I think are super interesting, is because they are these like random places in the world that have these relatively, for the most part, very healthy people,
right,
that live a very long time. And they're isolated from,
right.
These things, right? And they have very strong cultures. And their cultures are a little different, but they do have these strong cultures of walking, exercise, socializing, drinking a little bit of alcohol, eating whole foods, a little bit
right.
of meat, fish, oil. But it is also very much part of their lifestyle, right? And it's hard to separate them.
It's interesting you say that, because when you brought up, it can become like a religion, I think I experienced that as far as one of the things that I try to do is with clients put forward zero judgment. You listen to your body and there's no judgment. So, to not be righteous about it. If someone really needs meat, if someone really needs legumes, if someone really needs their vegetables or their plant-based, if something's really working for this body, we don't know their journey, we don't know how they feel, we're not inside their machines. So just to free up that people are doing the best they can to try to operate their design. And I know a lot of people have environmental initiatives and to support the good that everyone's trying to do and leave room for everyone's in process and growing. But that's where it can get a little bit. There's the righteousness and the judgment kind of seeps
right.
in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there is a set of political pressures or religious pressures. I mean, legitimate religious ones like this. Like if you're Jewish, if you're Orthodox Jewish, there's some serious constraints on what you can eat,
right.
or a Muslim or whatever. Or if you're born and where my parents were in Alabama, you only eat meat well done. Like
really?
That's it. Like
you're a bad person.
Yeah, well, it'll kill you. Like it's unclean and you might get super sick and die. Like the slightest shade of pink, like keep cooking it, right? And so but I think then that is one of the problems, because you have these peer pressure things that build, and California is also very strong in some of those things too, depending on where you are, and there are real society problems, whether it's climate change or war, or social economic issues that create unfairness with even food supply and stuff like that. And so those are a part of it. But I think the problem is you are on this individual journey, and you do have to be very careful judging people because because you don't know their past, why they are the way they are today, and it's as much your body could be as much PTSD driven, in your menu choices and stuff because of childhood trauma or whatever, than just because you don't have the discipline to avoid sugar, or whatever, right?
100%. Have you seen Tony Robbins' 6 basic human needs? There's 6 subconscious human needs, and a couple of them are safety, loving connection, certainty, uncertainty. And I was laughing reading the list thinking, okay, well, food can replace that. Or a lot of times we try to use food to replace these basic human needs. It can replace loving connection for some of us. It can replace certainty. I know I'm going to eat this every time, every day. It can replace uncertainty. Oh, I have a choice. I have variety. So certain things that we didn't get, needs that we didn't get met in childhood, food is a substitute sometimes for those subconscious needs and our habits around food. So that's where compassion comes in.
So I'm wondering, how closely do your like significant others eat the diet that you eat?
My significant other used to be vegan. I told him, I think you need some complete protein in your tissue. He prefers to be majority plant-based, much like Andrea, majority plant-based, and then adds in a little bit of meat and protein. That's his ideal. I think sometimes when we're out, there's more meat, but that's ideally how he'd like to eat.
Oh, okay. So he can go eat anywhere. He just chooses to eat mostly vegetables.
Yes, and he's much better at cooking than I am. So.
Oh, okay.
Yes, disciplined that way. Really.
I don't have a significant other, but if I'm ever on dates or out with friends, it doesn't really bother me. Like, I can find something to eat. I mean, I won't choose, like, let's go to the barbecue place.
Right.
You know what I mean? But even if I went to a barbecue place, I would be able to find a way to get something that is more suitable to what I prefer. But I don't let it stop me or hold me back. I just have to get creative. What's most interesting is actually when I go home to Minnesota, where my family and the culture there beyond my family is very much meat, dairy, eggs, heavy, highly processed stuff, and really heavy comfort food, like lasagnas, the this, the that. And I'm like, when I go home, I'm like,
what do? Do you bring your own food?
No, I mean, I'll go to the grocery store, but my family has, over the last year, become a lot more curious about what I've been doing with food and how I eat, and they're open to trying things. So I made them like my nice cream. I was like, okay, I have like a good summer treat. It's healthy ice cream. And they're like, oh, this is probably going to taste like shit. How can you have ice cream without dairy and the sugar? And I'm like, trust me, just eat this and you're going to love it. And they were like, this is amazing. So it's like, I'll just like, give them some things and then they start to believe like, that could actually be really good. Or like my mom has started to like implement some of my suggestions, and so has my dad. And then the others see that it's doing something. So then they're like, all right, well, maybe she's onto something. I'll give it a try.
There are some substitutes that are like, I had a nut cheese spread that actually tasted really good. Yeah. I mean, if no one told me, I would have thought it was dairy. Mm-hmm. There are some things. Well, let's say, so could you have a significant other that ate fast food, like all the time?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't affect me because I'm still going to eat what I want to eat. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's something I've had to get comfortable with. Like, it was harder in the beginning, like even at corporate events, for example, you get those people who are like, oh, you're having a salad again? It's like, do you know what's in the salad? It's not just lettuce. It's literally packed with so much food. Like, I actually made one of my bowls for a friend and they were like, this is a lot of food. I'm like, that's what I eat every day. But anyway, to answer your question, it wouldn't bother me. Like I would just continue to choose what I want to eat. And if they have a problem with that, then I guess we'll have a conversation.
So it could work.
Yeah, I do know one of my friends, meals with her significant other is like, it's like a very important thing for him. And he eats very like, I want to eat the pasta and Alfredo and the this and that. And she's like, guys, I'm like gaining weight. Like I like, oh my, this is so heavy. I'm constipated, this and that. And like, she's like, I just feel bad. But again, that's like, it's like, you just got to stay in your own and say, look at honey, like let's totally have the pasta Alfredo and the this and the that, but maybe let's add some greens, or I'm just only gonna have a little bit and introduce some of the stuff that I like, or I don't know. I guess it's each person's journey.
Yeah, I do think couples are in danger of eating the same thing, right? Like, again, because of the pressure or just the convenience, or whatever. And maybe also you tend to marry someone that's more like you sometimes too. I think not everybody, but like I think about my wife, there's probably the only thing we disagree on is probably cantaloupe,
Cantaloupe.
and cilantro. She has the cilantro tastes like insect spray gene, like she doesn't like it. But, and I think, and nobody internet canceled me because this is probably, it's just a scientific study, so it was probably wrong. But I think I saw something that like, if you hang out, the more overweight people you hang out with, the more likely you'll be overweight. And that sounds bad because then people are going to try to avoid hanging out with, overweight people or whatever. And it may be because it weakens your eating discipline because they're having something bigger, or, there was no like understanding in that study of like why, that was the thing. But it does seem like, again, we're social animals and there's going to be direct peer pressure and indirect that, could guide you to adopt what other people eat or to try it and then you like it and, or whatever.
My son and I went to Mammoth over the holidays, and my neighbor came with his son. And so because it was COVID, everyone brought food and we kind of shared food. But like there was such a disparity between what we were eating and what they were eating. Like they literally started unpacking their car and they had McDonald's bags in their hands. And Duquesne, my son, was like, I haven't had McDonald's in 6 years. And so like he's like, I don't want McDonald's. And then for dinner, it was like, one of those big Costco tins of fettuccine Alfredo. Mm-hmm. And they popped that in the oven. And I was like, I can't, because I can't do the dairy. And I was like, Duquesne, do you want it? He's like, no, I'm good. And he's like, I'm going to have the elk and the, like, some sort of stir-fried greens or something. Yeah. It was just such a disparity. But, I can see, like, if you just ate all that food, you probably would gain weight.
You said something earlier about, Ron, about genetics and how a lot of like disease and things that are genetic, but I actually, and I'm not a scientist by any means, but I was listening to Dr. Will, I'm going to botch his name, but he goes by Dr. B, Dr. Will Biliswecki, I don't know. Amazing guy. His Instagram is the Gut Health MD. He wrote this book recently called Fiber Fueled, and I've listened to him on some podcasts and just incredible wealth of knowledge. But there's been studies recently about the human DNA is actually like 98% the same, but it's the genes, and we can have a gene for X, Y, or Z, but it doesn't get activated. Right. It's our gut microbiome and what we're putting into our body that can activate the gene. So if you think like we're 98% the same DNA, like I think it's more not genetics, but the culture and the environment that you're being surrounded in.
Epigenetics, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's right. And since you brought up epigenetics, and then I'd love to hear what you were just getting ready to say. I think the other, and this will be out there a little bit, but there's actually been some studies where if your grandma was overweight So basically she had a reasonably good life, access to food basically, and not stress. You have a shorter lifespan. And if your grandma lived through famine, you have a longer lifespan. Like, they have enough time and studies now to start putting stuff together. And that's tied to epigenetics too, because, there are genes that when your mother was being born, that were activated in your mother because of her mother's experience. Right. And that can carry through too. But I do think, Ned, I think you're right. Like, there's a lot we don't understand about gene activation right now, and everybody just thought it was just like a hard baked in thing. But there is now good science that environment will trigger these genes on and off, and again, the gut's crazy complicated and full of its own genome of trillions of different kinds of bacteria, or numbers of them of different kinds.
Yeah, it very complicated too. We're so sophisticated, it's almost unbelievable. Just the human machine and the human design. One example is 80% of the human population, I think it is likely to have a heterozygous MTHFR gene, which has to do with a methylation cycle. And to fix that, you need a methylated B12. So B12 is folate. All the Bs are really important. B1 thiamine, B9, which is cobalamin, and then B12, which is your folate. But I might have switched the B9 and the B12. But it's cobalamin, thiamine, and folate. They're all very important for your brain and for your nerves. But 80% of the population having a MTHFR gene, it's actually homozygous. It's one of the branches of the gene. One of the branches of the gene to hinder the methylation cycle if you're not getting enough folate. That's huge. I mean, that's miscarriage. That's autism. That's premature birth. That's Alzheimer's. And so really, really big. I mean, gosh, it's like take a methylated B12, and that's very, very preventative. Some big consequences for not having enough folate. And so then the question becomes, is it that we don't have enough microbiome, or is it our farming practices really we don't have enough nutrient-rich food? Right. Because I can tell you that because of our farming practices, we aren't consuming enough iodine. The thyroid needs iodine. Thyroid, with both of us, cholesterol and blood pressure and production of hormones, extremely, extremely important. So is it the antibiotics' fault? Is it the farming practices' fault? Now it starts to get, again, it's because we can't control the experiment in a way that teaches us to isolate, or that tells us to isolate one factor as causation or the causal.
That's what's crazy, is it goes back to how connected everything is. Like, even if you were to eat all plants and vegetables, if you were getting, depending on how the farming was, and what pesticides, this and that were put on it, that could still have a negative effect. Or the fact that all of that shit is now in the soil that is now being recycled. Yeah. It's literally like the circle of life is insane, and these intertwined factors are like, it's so intricate. So intricate. I mean, there's definitely things that you can still do to move forward and get healthier, but there are a lot of things that as a society that we need to course correct.
Yeah, and I think variety is part of it too, right? Like, I think our modern farming processes have also triggered, like, we eat. I think we domesticate 7 or 8 different kinds of animals now. Yeah. When there's many thousands that if you're into eating animals, but same with plants. Like, you go to the grocery store, no matter pretty much anywhere in the world, actually, it's the same greens, the same radishes, the same yellow and white onion. Right. Yeah. And
year round.
Yeah, year round, right? And so that can't be great for complex animals like humans, right?
You guys heard of our vertical farming using aeroponics? It's fascinating. I just learned about it on YouTube this week.
Are you going to give it a shot?
You know what? Mark my words, I'm going to have a vertical farm someday.
I have watched a few of those videos, yeah.
It's really fascinating, I think. I mean, the greens and what they can grow in such like a... even just looking at the colors of them, I was like blown away. And then literally I can take the whole plant out and it's not, because it's not in the soil. Right? It's wild. And they're doing it like this. It's this company, the one that I looked at in Mesa, Arizona, like in the desert, where if you were doing that just outside, trying to naturally in soil in all of this land and with all the pesticides and whatnot, like I don't think it would. I don't know anything about farming, but anyway, I digress.
So yeah, to your point about diversity, in the movie A Life on Our Planet, David Attenborough, I think the summary was, hey, our solution is biodiversity. And because that kind of singular focus on farming or production is killing our planet. And I think it's true for the human being too, diversity. I mean, if we were able to eat a wider variety of fruits and vegetables, a wider variety of meats or animal proteins, if we do, I think that might solve a lot of things. And so it's either that, as simple solutions, that, or listening to your body as simple solutions. Otherwise, we're left with massive doses of education.
100%. There was a study, I forget what it's called, but they found that for the optimal microbiome and health, 30 different plants and vegetables a week.
A week?
I believe it was a week, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I just think it's interesting because if you go back to, I liked what Ron was saying, let's look at evolutionary biology, let's look at patterns in nature. But if you look at the infant, even if it receives perfect breast milk, the process of breastfeeding, touch and being rocked and eye contact and all of that is how much of that has to do with it being a perfect system designed to nurture the infant. And I would say that touch is a really big portion of it. It's a baby can go a while without food and water, but it can't go very long without being touched, and it will develop mental illness very, very quickly. So granted, I also know that my subconscious needs, I have a high need for love and connection. So of course I'm gonna put forward this point, and it's gonna be emphasized in my mind. But I think community and eating together, I think that's a huge, huge component. I think you can eat perfect food, and if you're alone in your car every day, you're eating perfect food. I don't know. I don't. My hypothesis would be that the digestion it will show up as imperfect if you never have a community component.
Yeah, I mean, I think that ties in right to the general theme of, food and lifestyle are going to go together, and I think to get the most out of it, it is important. You want good lifestyle and good food, right? I think a crazy healthy eater that's living a super stressed life probably isn't going to have a longer life, right? And then you occasionally see people who smoke until they're 110, and for whatever luck,
right?
They didn't get cancer, or their body beat it whenever they had it or whatever. And so, but I think a lot of it was their lifestyle. They were probably very happy people, engaged, things too. So,
right.
Yeah, it's super interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot to take into consideration. Like there are just multiple priorities. People who live in this area, a big priority is work, but now it's food and exercise and meditation and family and relationships and.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you all were saying, and that can be that can be very overwhelming if you're listening to this. Like, oh my gosh, I need to now. Who am I surrounding myself with? How do I feel? How do I do with my I work out, I need to figure out all this food stuff, overwhelm. Yeah. But I think my biggest piece of advice, and I said this early, is if you're going to start somewhere, start with food. And any long-lasting change that's going to have effective results is going to take time, patience, and persistence, and a bit of trial and error. And just start small. It's like baby steps. Over time, you'll look back and you'll be like, after 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years, be like, wow.
Yeah.
But just be patient with yourself and be okay taking bite-sized, no pun intended, changes.
If you could eat one more cup of fruits and vegetables every month, within a year, you're eating plenty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
Gotta
that.
start somewhere.
Maybe we'll end it on that. One more cup of fruits and vegetables every month.
Yeah.
Yeah.